Hey folks, this week I talked with Jonathan Thomas about OpenShot. It's the video editor that aims to, be simple to use and yet still powerful enough to get everything done. It runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, completely open source. It's a lot of fun. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned. This is Floss Weekly, episode 859, recorded Tuesday, December the 16th. OpenShot, simple and fast. Hey folks, it's time for Floss Weekly. That's the show about free, Libre, and open source software. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and today we're doing some video editing. We're talking about OpenShot, and we've got the man behind the scenes. Jonathan Thomas is with us today. He is the creator and lead developer of OpenShot, and he's got some other really interesting things in his bio. I saw, I'm pretty sure this was his, I saw something about Minecraft modding and AI and all sorts of other stuff in here. So this may be a wide-ranging conversation. Although we're here mostly to talk about OpenShot. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here today. And so OpenShot, it's a video editor, right? And every time I think about running an open source video editor like on Linux, I remember an episode, it's been several years ago now, of it was actually the Computer File. This is a YouTube channel that I think Brady Haran is the name of the guy that runs it. And they're still out there. They do computer science related stuff. I think they're associated with the University of Nottingham, if I remember correctly. But anyway, several years ago, they did an interview with EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And they said, we're going to try to edit and upload this video to YouTube using only open source software. And I don't think they were able to do it at the time. And, a big part of it was video codecs, of course. But so they had this little added in section at the end of it, like talking about the struggles that they had trying to edit video with open source software. And I look back on that and it's like, we have it so good now. There's like 3 or 4 different options that are really good open source software that just work. And I think OpenShot is one of those, isn't it?
I mean, I sure hope so. What year was that from?
Oh goodness, let me see if I can find it real quick.
Was that pre-2008?
I don't think it was that long. If it's that long ago, I suddenly feel very old. But that may be what's going to happen. Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, because OpenShot was started around 2008, right about that time period. And that was kind of a bleak period for open source video editors.
Yeah, well, so I mean, there's a couple of different problems sort of in this space. One is obviously like building a video editor is not the easiest thing to do. So that's sort of a problem in and of itself. But you've also got the whole codec and patent issue around video codecs. And it's better now than it was. But boy, that used to be... I mean, I remember the problem of running Linux on the desktop and you couldn't listen to MP3s because those were patent encumbered.
Yeah, patents are still a big problem in the video editing world.
This may not have been Computer File. It may have been one of the other channels, but because I'm not immediately finding it. But it was. I remember it distinctly. I'll see if I can find it for the show notes.
Right.
But it was. It was a challenge where it's like there was not an intersection. Seems like they were able to do a video edit, but there was no intersection between the codecs that their editor supported and the codecs that YouTube would support. And I think Google has really worked on this because you now have, and it's not just Google, but they're one of the ones that have really worked on it because you now have some codecs that are intentionally written to not be patent encumbered. And then you've got like the H.264 support. I think Cisco has worked very hard to make people give that to people.
Right.
It's not the problem that it used to be. Although, like you say, it's still a problem. So that's sort of an aside. We went down a rabbit hole there. Let's talk about OpenShot. And so, what you mentioned it? It's 2008 it got started. What was sort of the impetus for that? Why did you sit down and go, I'm going to make a video editor?
2008 is kind of a fun. I was kind of thinking about kind of the Wayback Machine, of what the internet looked like in 2008, specifically what the Linux ecosystem looked like in 2008. And I started out with like Ubuntu 8.04, I think, maybe an earlier version, but 8.04 was like the LTS version in 2008, I believe. And I just had the hardest time figuring out how to edit a video, and I wasn't the only one, obviously, but that was there were options, like there was options like, I don't know if you remember, Cinelera was one, and there was a few other open source video editors, but none of them actually worked for me, at least. So that was really the impetus, is like getting into Linux, getting excited, and then trying to figure out how to actually edit a video and realizing like I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So you had trouble figuring out how to edit a video, and the solution you jumped to was, I'm going to make my own.
Well, man, I tried a bunch of other things first, of course. Like, right. I tried really hard to get other distros installed. I tried everything I could to figure out like a stable video editing workflow, but I don't think I was like successful in the least. Like a single edited video was not to happen.
Yeah. So I did find this, by the way. It was on Computer File. It's the name of it is Free Software, and it was 2014. So not quite all the way back in 2008 or beyond, but the world was still a different place in 2014. Let's say that.
Sure. Yeah. But you should have been able to edit a video 2014, but because, at that point, like products like OpenShot did exist on certain maybe not on every distro, but, certain distros.
Yeah. The notes on this, it says that the film was produced almost entirely with free software. The exception is that he had to transcode the original footage to an easier to handle format before he started.
Yeah, that was a really common thing back in that time period.
Because your cameras had their own proprietary formats that they worked with.
Yeah.
That's
and I think back in like 2008, 2010, most content was coming from like tape, digital tape formats and things like that. So it wasn't like it was all SD card and digital video back then.
Right. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of people that watch the show that have used Linux for years and years. I think there are some new people to it as well. And just like, even just like 2014 or 2008, it was so different. There was no Valve working to make Linux at that point. There was no Steam Deck. It was quite a trip. You had to be adventurous to do some of this stuff back in the day. 2008 would have been... I would have been using it for a while. 2008 may have been about the time that I went all in and finally said, I'm not running Windows on this laptop at all anymore. It's going to be strictly a Linux machine. And it was an adventurous time. It was definitely an adventurous time. Yeah,
that's basically what happened to me. Is like 2008, I had converted all my old, hardware into running Linux, and I was just trying to figure out a solution for video editing. That was like my only holdup, was trying to edit videos. Everything else was fine. I really liked Linux. I just wanted to edit a video.
Yeah. And so most video stuff on Linux is based everywhere, actually. I don't have to include Linux in that. Most of it's based on FFmpeg. Is FFmpeg sort of the base, the foundational technology behind OpenShot?
I think FFmpeg is the basis of every video editing platform everywhere. Like whether it was... I don't know. I mean, it feels like it's fundamentally what everything uses to decode and encode video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that includes OpenShot.
There's essentially three, and FFmpeg is by far the most popular of these. But you've got VideoLAN, VLC. Its libraries get used in some things. GStreamer is sort of separate, and then FFmpeg. And FFmpeg is the one that's just gone nuts and supports everything, and they troll people on Twitter by talking about how they rewrite code in assembly to make it faster, and it's kind of a glorious thing. It's a lot of fun.
It's and I've even There's some conventions in California that I do on occasion. One of them is the Southern California Linux Expo. But being like in Los Angeles and meeting people that are coming by the booth for OpenShot, I spoke to a lot of people like involved in actual, like visual effects companies and video editing people that are, that have the IMDb credits for actual shows and stuff. And all of them had FFmpeg stories. And like all of them had some crazy story where everything had to be transcoded through FFmpeg before they produced the movie or before that TV show could be edited. So I think it's just like ubiquitous. It's just everywhere. FFmpeg, to me at least, it's just used. Even like VLC and Chrome, the Chrome browser, and just everything you think of that plays or edits video usually has some connection to FFmpeg somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how many times under the hood that you discover that one of those is running. Like, yeah, when you play video in Chrome or in Firefox, I think some of those either use the FFmpeg libs, or in some cases they just straight up call FFmpeg itself to play it. And there's magic to make it work that you don't see that come up, but that's what it actually does under the.
Uploading content to YouTube, for example, they're transcoding things with FFmpeg.
Oh, absolutely.
And just about every video platform out there is using some form of FFmpeg.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it's 2008. You're trying to edit a video. This was the dark times, and things were not as easy as they are now. What? And it's before there was LLMs. You couldn't just vibe code a video editor. What did this process look like? Like what were the sort of the steps you took to even lay the foundation for being able to do this?
Well, there was also like another element to this, which was I had just like, as I mentioned, all my systems are now running some form of Linux. I have all these, like old CDs I'm burning, all these ISOs. I'm just having fun setting up Linux. And so one of the reasons I also wanted to start a project was to learn some of these programming languages that were more common on Linux. So, for example, Python is something that I discovered in 2008, and I was really curious to play around with it. And so this video editing bug was kind of like a reason to learn more stuff about Linux, a reason to learn some of the programming languages that are common, more common on Linux than the Windows platform.
Mashed Potato, one of our longtime listeners, says that according to Wikipedia, which it's never wrong, FFmpeg goes all the way back to the year 2000.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It has been around for a while. It is kind of the granddaddy. So
yeah.
You said Python?
Well, even other libraries, like libraries that you think are not connected to FFmpeg, like one that came to mind is like GStreamer or like VLC. Like people watch videos in their browser, they do streaming, like Google Meet and all these kind of things, and they just all are based off some form of connection to FFmpeg. So
right, yeah, like so VLC uses libavcodec, which is,
and that's the same thing that OpenShot uses, and that comes straight from FFmpeg.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Absolutely. So you did this in Python?
So I started playing around with like what libraries could edit video. Obviously FFmpeg was something that was out there, but it was mostly a CLI at that point. And it was a lot different. Like 2008 FFmpeg is a different world than 2025 FFmpeg.
Seems to be the theme for this show. 2008 was different.
Yeah,
man.
it's just kind of interesting because as I was thinking about this interview, like 2008 to now, there's a lot of wild changes that have happened to the world and the internet and Linux and especially video editing. But yeah, I kind of played around with it, trying to find my like a library that was already written that would just do this. And then that didn't. There was a few options out there in 2008, but none of them were terribly reliable. But that kind of started my investigation, I would say, into how do you edit a video?
Right.
Like how do you do that with code? And that was kind of my more of an investigation than anything.
So did you start by like splicing together video using FFmpeg on the command line? Was that like sort of the initial investigations here?
I mean, I don't recall that specifically, but I'm sure I did. I'm sure it was one of the things that I played around with. And there was a library called, well, there was GStreamer, which was like the way that Linux mostly would play back videos, or at least certain distros would use GStreamer, which was kind of a streaming wrapper. But streaming wrappers aren't great for video editing.
Right.
And so it kind of failed. There was a lot of failure as I bounced around. And then I found a library called MLT, which was which is it powers like video editors like Kdenlive and a few other like Shotcut and a few other like open source video editors are powered by that, which is also powered by FFmpeg.
Yes. Not
to mention.
Yes.
And so my first version of OpenShot that did anything useful was actually powered by MLT sitting on top of FFmpeg. And that was kind of the first time I had something you could cut a video in half and splice things together and, you know, mute a clip and the basic stuff, you know, real basic stuff, but it worked.
Yeah, and so how long do you think that took from the I'm going to do this myself to I've got a thing that I can actually do something with?
I mean, arguably, I'm still working on this mission. So I've never quite finished it from 2008 to 2025. But I don't know. It took probably a year to go from nothing to something that kind of worked, that had like a distributable package that people could install. It was probably about a year.
Yeah.
Like you said, no LLMs, no help. Just kind of trying to figure it out and just, you know, nudging forward.
Yeah. I'm pulling up the OpenShot GitHub right now, and a couple of things that jumped out at me. It is mostly a Python program, but it's built on top of Qt.
Yeah, the front end of OpenShot is built in Python and Qt. And so that's the foundation of, you know, like the buttons and the interactions you have with like your mouse and keyboard and the window itself, things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, 3 weeks ago we had Maurice from Qt on, one of their devs.
Oh, nice.
And so not very long ago we did a deep dive into the Qt ecosystem and all the stuff going on. And so
I mean Qt is just a fantastic project.
Yeah. That let you do Windows and Mac OS builds too, didn't it?
It opened up the door. I mean, it opened up the possibility that the front end, at least, could open up on, you know, Windows or Mac. But the video editing dependencies were still very difficult to port to Mac and Windows, and still are. And it's not terribly easy to compile everything for Windows these days.
It exists. Does it exist? Is there? Yeah, there's a .exe on the on your GitHub releases.
Yeah, we support Mac, Windows, Linux, Chrome OS. So these are all platforms that were hard-won battles, you know, to get each new platform, and our build servers and our our all the CI, and it was just a long battle to get everything working.
Yes.
But, you know, sometimes people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm on Windows and I just want to do a quick compile of OpenShot. Can you help? And it's like, there's no quick compile on Windows of OpenShot. It's, you know, and we have instructions and we have build servers that I guard with lock and key because they work and I don't want them to break.
Yeah. Take a snapshot of that server. Make that your golden master.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to remember some of the technologies I've used on Windows, like MINGW and I forget the name of the other one. Yeah, there are some of those tool chains.
Well, one of the ones we use for Windows is like MSys and that whole ecosystem. And now there's like an MSys 2, and there's a bunch of pre-built libraries. That's actually pretty cool. It's kind of similar to like the Linux subsystem for Windows, for those who aren't familiar with MSys, but it came way before and has more packages, and it's kind of more like legit open source ecosystem.
Yeah, MSys is also, it runs more native, if I remember correctly. It's not just a virtual machine? I think that's accurate.
No, it's running native. These are all native builds on Windows, but it uses, like, they have kind of ported a bunch of the Linux build commands so that when a build script is running, for example, it can figure out like those commands actually exist on Windows if you run that build script through like MSys.
Right. Right. So that's the thing with WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux. It's great. You can do amazing things with it, but it's basically just Linux inside a virtual machine. And so that's kind of a different ball game from running all this stuff native.
Yeah.
One of the I forget I don't remember who said it, but somebody that actually knew what they were talking about was talking about Windows, and apparently it's like 99% Unix compliant. It'll do everything except fork works a little bit differently. But that is
On the you're talking about like the Windows subsystem?
no
The Linux subsystem,
no
or just
like the Windows kernel, like the Windows OS is apparently 99% Unix compliant, which is why things like MSys2 can exist. It's because they have, over the years, they've added so much stuff to it, to make it kind of work like Unix does. Under the hood, obviously, nobody sane uses these things on Windows, right?
Right. Yeah, they're mostly used for like build servers and people like me that are trying to like automate builds and stuff. Because I wouldn't normally run that stack.
Right. Yeah, no, it's specifically useful for, you've got a program that you want to be able to compile for Windows and for Linux and for Mac OS.
Right.
Okay,
and I think one of the things we found that worked really well with OpenShot was actually having like native, like if we're going to do a Windows build, we build it on Windows. If we're going to do a Mac build, we build it on Mac. So we run like actual hardware for all of our build servers, and that just, in my opinion, has been easier for compatibility reasons and troubleshooting and debugging and all that kind of stuff. It's made it a lot easier.
Sure. Okay, so I was going to go one direction, but you just said something. I'm going to ask about it. You run your own hardware. That's not free. Is there a financial structure to OpenShot? How does this work?
Yeah, OpenShot is structured to take all my money from me, is how it's structured. So, I mean, I think this is something that I like. I see like now. Once you see it, it's hard not to. It's hard to see it another way. But like a lot of open source projects, a lot of bigger open source projects run a lot of whether even if they're in the cloud, like even if they're using AWS or Azure, they're still running a lot of systems, and there's a lot of cost. Even just download links to OpenShot. OpenShot's like 200 megabytes a download, and we have millions and millions of downloads a year. So even that is like something I can't afford. And so there's all sorts of, trying to use things like GitHub and big platforms to take the hosting costs of running an open source project. But there are lots of costs with running a large open source project that you don't think about in the beginning.
So do you have a, is there some structure where people donate money? Do you do what Ardor does and charge money for the executable builds, or is it literally just all coming out of your pocket?
Well, so over the years, this has been like a lot of what I've put my focus onto is like how to be able to do this full time, which is what I do, and how to fund myself and pay my mortgage and still provide free executables and packages. And so I've been pretty successful at this the last 5 or 6 years, but it is definitely a different climate. Like 2024, 2025 is definitely harder to stay. It's harder to raise money as an open source project now than it ever has been. But yeah, we have donations. So like one aspect, we have like Patreon, we have donations on our website. We also run on our main website, we run Google Ads, which has historically been a large percentage of, like the funds that pay for OpenShot. But that's kind of taken a huge dip the last year or two since AI overviews have eaten up the internet. Yeah. And so I know I'm not the only website that sees like revenues falling and web traffic kind of like not making it to the final destination anymore. And then we also have a platform called the OpenShot Cloud API that runs on clouds for commercial customers. And it's really something that mostly commercial customers would be interested in. But that's also helped fund maybe like half of the OpenShot project the last few years.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's always neat to see the various solutions that open source projects come up with to sort of do their funding model. And I'm glad to hear that you guys have multiple sort of avenues, directions that you go with that.
Yeah.
Is there something like a prompt, a pop-up in OpenShot itself that, hey, it's free to you, but it's not free to us. Here's where you donate money.
Not really. I mean, we don't like put ads in our installers. We don't pop up windows when and saying, please help us. We don't do anything like that. I mean, on the website, we encourage people to donate, when they download it, but we don't block your download or anything.
Right.
You can download it, and then we encourage you, like, we put everybody's name inside OpenShot's credits that donate to the project. And so if you want your name inside OpenShot, you can just donate a few bucks on the website, and then we'll put your name in the product. So that's our pitch.
Yeah, there's it's sort of becoming a standard, like, industry practice. A couple of different groups, open source projects, have started doing. It's kind of like a pop-up. Really, it's a prompt, and they'll do it once a year, right? So KDE has done this, Thunderbird has done this, and they have both had excellent results from it. And it's just once a year it'll pop up and say, hey, we hope you're enjoying the product. This is not free for us to do. Here's the place where you can go and donate money. And because they've been intentional about it, and the fact that it's only once a year and not every time that you start the program, really helps people feel good about it. And that's been really successful for at least those two projects. I kind of anticipate that that's sort of the model that more and more will begin to embrace, because it is such a problem. Like, it is not free to run the servers to do all this, but also, like, you've got to eat and pay your rent. And yeah. Open source is sort of at a inflection point, you could say, where it's like there's a lot of people that are just doing this, and so far they've been doing it in their spare time, but it's becoming more and more important. And in your spare time maybe is not going to work forever. It's not going to work forever for every project, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
I feel extra sad for, like, those open source projects that are less visible. Like these libraries that keep our packets encrypted, and things that are security layers and TCP type layers. Like, some of these projects are so important to the free internet we have today that they're just, like, invisible, though, to most people. It's like one guy or one girl, and they work on it part-time. They get no revenue. All these big companies use it. Right. So I feel bad for those projects the most. But at least OpenShot, on a positive note, like, it's an application that usually people seek out to download. It's something that, like, I need to edit a video, I'm going to go download OpenShot and get it set up. And so it's more like I have, I guess, more visibility around OpenShot than some open source projects do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we mentioned a couple other editors, open source editors even. So there's Kdenlive, of course, and Shotcut is one of the other ones. What's sort of the landscape here? Where does OpenShot fit into this trio? There's more than just the three, but those are sort of the three that we talked about. Where does
at this
it fit?
point, I think OpenShot, my goal with OpenShot has always been to make, like, the simplest, most, like, fewest buttons, simplest workflows, and keep it really, really, like, just simple and fast, so people can just quickly drop videos in, trim them, add overlays, export, and all the defaults are, like, very reasonable. You don't have to have a degree in media to open it up and understand what you're doing. And so that's been a big, like, and I still think I'm one of the only projects that really focuses on simplicity. It's something that I think about just all the time. Is like, do I need that button? Does this button need to be there? Can I delete that button? And how could I do this without putting another button on the screen? How could this be done in a way that it's a cool feature? How can we do this for those 3 people out of 100 that need it in a way that doesn't just have another button on a toolbar? And so that's something we think about a lot with OpenShot.
Yeah, so I was about to ask, do you feel that constant pressure from, your minority of users that want to make it more complicated? The projects I've been involved with, there's always this pressure. Sometimes it's coming from me. Sometimes I'm the power user that wants more buttons. But, like, there's always this pressure, like, oh, no, somebody might want this configuration, so you got to put it in there. How do you push back on that?
I mean, OpenShot's a strange project sometimes because like people will contribute code to our project, but a lot of times like if it doesn't fit the model of like what I want, like the direction. If it's like just totally in left field and just adds a bunch of buttons to the screen, then I just won't merge those things. And like, yeah, there's maybe some hurt feelings and people that aren't happy, but like I'm always appreciative of people contributing anything, and I encourage people to like make forks of OpenShot and have fun and add features. But if it doesn't make it simpler, faster, more stable, then it might not be merged upstream.
That's fair. That's fair. I think
Yeah.
I think most projects have come to that. If they hadn't, they are quickly discovering the need to, as LLMs make it so easy for anyone to make pull requests that sort of look like they work.
Uh-huh.
As OpenShot had to deal with that, has someone come along with a 10,000 change pull request that also renames the project? Have you had one of those?
I mean,
yet?
I think LLMs are good for certain things, and and don't get me wrong, like I definitely try to use these tools where I can, but like I would say half of the stuff that in my experience is generated is stuff that I reject anyway. It's like, nope. That's not going to happen, but sometimes for simple things, like I've had really good luck with it finding a bug and suggesting a fix. And then of course I always test my code regardless of how I generate it or write it. So if it works and it's simple and it actually solves a bug, then like I'll merge that, no problem. But if you send me a 10,000 line change request, then it likely won't be merged. That happened before LLMs too. Sometimes people will go search replace your code and submit you a pull request with just thousands of changes that seem arbitrary and they just seem risky. High risk and little reward.
Yeah. I use VS Code for my coding, and somehow I don't know if it was an update or what, but VS Code turned on automatically AI-based code autocompletion for me. And so I've had about 24 hours now to ride that and see what I think of it. And it has wasted me some time because it wrote some code that had a bug in it that I didn't catch. But it's also impressed me several times that it knew what I was trying to do and like gave me some reasonable boilerplate code for it. So I'm about 50-50. Like half the time I look at what it suggests, it's like, no, VS Code, you have no idea what's going on here. Go away. And the other half, it's like, oh yeah, that's that's pretty much right. I'll hit tab on that, and use that code. It's such a weird place that we're at right now.
Yeah. Well, one of the most interesting uses I've found for some of these, like for example, OpenAI's like Codex or Claude Code, these like CLIs that you can just run in any folder. You just like go into a terminal and go to a folder with source code and you like just run the command. And now it's kind of like you've given the LLM access to your source code. And you can just basically prompt it to like do stuff. Now, of course, it can change code also, but one of the coolest things I found was just like asking it to research how something works, or asking it to like, here's the user bug report. I'm not exactly sure where this is happening. Go figure it out. And so not actually asking it to fix it, but just telling, like, explain to me why this might break,
Right.
Or what might cause this stack trace, like what might cause this to fail. And it's been really interesting and found some really good, hard to find bugs.
Yeah. I've done a little bit of that. One of the projects I work with, I wrote some code that then started crashing, and it's like, okay, so this is one of my first times really playing around with the AI. I went to, I think I used the AI built into GitHub, and it's like, you hit the button to have a conversation with it. It's like, all right, look, this code is crashing here, and this is what it's saying. Tell me reasons why it might be crashing. And, it told me 3 or 4 different things to check. And a couple of those I wasn't aware of. It's like, oh, okay, I'll go run this down. It turns out it wasn't any of those. It was actually, from what I can tell, it was actually a bug with the embedded implementation of standard sort, actually, on that particular platform.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it was really not fun to figure that out. So it's like, well, we just the solution was that we wrote our own sorting protocol and didn't use standard sort after all. But it's like it gave me 3 or 4 different things that sounded good. None of them were right, but I definitely appreciated in that particular case the hints of things to go look at and sort of throw out as, okay, it's not actually this.
Yeah,
it was really interesting. Okay, so where are we at with OpenShot now? So one of the questions that you have here on my little cheat sheet is, why come back for 3.4? So how long ago did 3.4 ship, and what are the goodies that are in there?
So 3.4 just shipped like within 24 hours right now.
Nice.
It's been in production for it's been about a year, I think. And it was supposed to be like a 1-month sprint, and it has turned into a 12-month sprint. And this is one of the challenges of like running your own open source project, is like being diligent and coming up with schedules and stuff. But sometimes you just have so much fun working on stuff and adding new stuff. It's hard to draw the line.
Yes.
But yeah, 3.4, I mean, we talked about like all the way back in 2008, we basically had very little functionality. You could maybe cut a clip in half or something. And so with 3.4, we've made like massive performance improvements, stability, memory. So it's like the same OpenShot that you know and love, but it's crashes less. It exports like 30% faster. Renders like across the board. Performance across the board is like about 30% faster on the same hardware. And so that's been a big push. It's just been like performance and like really trying to figure out where are things, bogging up in the system, and also just unnecessary memory usage. So we're trying really hard to, not store stuff we don't need to store in memory. But yeah, 3.4, I think it's certainly the best version of OpenShot that's ever existed, is always my goal with each new release. But I think for most users, they will find it as just like a very simple, easy to use video editor that will just work and let you do your video editing and then be done.
Sure. How you mentioned that you try to keep it simple. How many bells and whistles are there? Like, what's the level of what you can do with OpenShot? Can you do like picture-in-picture effects, chroma keying?
Oh yeah,
white balance
OpenShot has
adjustment?
we have an entire keyframe animation system. Like everything you basically in OpenShot can be keyframed. There's like an unlimited number of layers and keyframes, and you can basically do like 99% of what everybody needs to do in a video editing project. I mean, there's always like limitations on like some of the state of the art, like Hollywood type stuff you're not gonna find that in OpenShot, or most open source video editors.
Right.
But for all your like really, 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 really common paths, as far as like dropping in, like for example, mixing different frame rates in OpenShot is like effortless. So the average user doesn't record all their footage in one frame rate, they end up with like a 30 frame per second video, and then a 24 frame clip of a movie, and then a 60 frame from their phone. And so OpenShot kind of does this, I think, better than most video editors, where we just kind of seamlessly map frame rates together. And it's just kind of, like I said, like very reasonable defaults, and gets you to the end render looking nice with good, reasonable, bit rates, and everything just works without you having to be a video editing expert.
Yeah. What does the audio editing stuff look like inside of OpenShot? This is something that I've found just over the years of doing technology stuff, is a lot of times the video guys are terrible at audio editing. And I have a little bit of an audio engineer background. I worked in a studio for a little while, and so I pay attention to that more than some people do. Which side of
OpenShot
that
3? Yeah, OpenShot is definitely better at audio editing now than we have been historically. Like we have much faster, like waveform generations that you can kind of like zoom into and make precise edits. It's an area that we're like, a year ago it was a lot rougher. A year before that it was kind of non-existent. So we're definitely making some good strides in like, giving you like the precision of dropping in some audio, splitting it like every channel on its own track, visualizing waveforms and whatnot.
Yeah. Is there support for stuff like VST plugins or any of that? Or is that just beyond?
We don't have Yeah, I've considered it many times, but we have some audio plugins for some basic stuff. Like we have compressors and expanders and some basic audio effects inside OpenShot, but we don't have like a plugin architecture that you can go and grab. And part of that is a copyright patent related thing for VST, I think, plugins. But
sure.
So it's exposure to more litigation, some of the stuff, but
that's part of the working on open source software that's less fun. So you've got to actually think about that at some point. You get big enough, you have enough legal structure that like you've got to think about that, and that's when it ceases to be fun. It turns into more of a job.
I mean it's and OpenShot has been named in many litigations over the years, and partially because we've been around so long now that we can be named as like prior use for certain patent cases.
Oh, okay. That's the good way to be named in litigation. That I was imagining something much worse.
No, but like one of the problems is that like being named and like being deposed for this kind of stuff is that they don't really pay you, and you're kind of compelled by the courts to waste a lot of time.
Yeah. And
so it's like the bigger the project gets, there's more costs. There's more costs like that are kind of like just taxes of, just a tax on your time, and
right.
Even if there's not a direct cost, it's like there's some sort of cost.
Yes, I've been summoned once that didn't have anything to do with open source. That was because I helped somebody transfer some video footage off a security camera. And it's like, you have been served. Thankfully, that one's settled before we actually had to get into the courtroom. But it's no fun. Nice. They don't pay very well. I was like, we get paid for this, right? And they're like, yeah, $20 for the day. It's like at that point, it's not even worth going down and doing the paperwork for the measly $20. It's kind of
without naming like any names, like some of these, like giant tech companies that are paying lawyers millions of dollars, to do all this litigation, they're the ones that are really winning all this stuff, because a lot of these things never make it to courts. They're just like a bunch of lawyers fighting other lawyers, and then they settle. Like their intention is to probably settle anyway, but they just battle each other, and then they pull people like us in to be deposed to make their case stronger and pay you, your $20, and then, at the end of the day, it's like the winners are the lawyers at these kind of things.
Yeah. Next time I have this come up, I need to go talk to my CPA buddy who has made a career out of being an expert witness, and apparently he makes fairly decent money at doing the expert witness thing. I got to go learn his secrets. How do you charge for this?
That would be great to know. How do you make money doing that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so what is OpenShot?
So as I mentioned previously, like the very first version of OpenShot was based on MLT, which sits on top of FFmpeg. At some point, and I don't remember exactly when, I think it was when I started working toward cross-platform support, like building on Windows, building on Mac, that I decided to just make the whole stack myself instead of using other people's libraries. And there's a bunch of reasons, like this is like one of the oldest kind of open source questions, right? Do you like help make another project better, or do you just make your own thing? And invariably people just like to make their own thing. But I think in my case there's so much complexity in these kind of libraries, from FFmpeg to then libraries sitting on top of FFmpeg, and they all have different goals. In the case of MLT, they just were really complicated, and I just didn't fully understand how it all worked. And so I think it was like at some point you realize, where am I going to put my time, like understanding this other person's code, or am I just going to like design a library that just exactly does what I want? And so that's what I ended up doing. And it was very hard. I thought it would be easier. It was a lot harder than I thought.
One of the great quotes that I've seen is that for someone to really tackle and solve one of these hard programming problems, they have to be a little bit naive, because if they really understood how hard the thing was that they were trying to do, they wouldn't waste their time on it. To really achieve greatness, you have to be a little bit dumb. You have to be dumb enough to bite it off.
Yeah, well, put me in that category for sure. I think definitely I was a little naive when I started lib OpenShot. But I'm really happy I have it now. Like now that it's working and it's like more mature, I use it. I mean, it's like I understand it. I know how to troubleshoot it. I know how to make it go faster. You know, I understand all the knobs on it and the gears and how it works.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a challenge to get there.
Yeah, I can believe it. You know where all of the moving parts are down on the inside.
I would say most. I remember where most of the moving parts are. It's a lot to keep in your brain, but
yes.
But there's also some like naive aspects to it where I really wanted lib OpenShot to be frame accurate, so that for edits, because that was something with like most video edit. Well, all video editing libraries, you say go get me frame 301, and you're not guaranteed to get frame 301.
Right.
You might get frame 299 or frame 302. It's like it's not frame accurate. And so I really, really wanted lib OpenShot to be frame accurate. But over the years, I've realized that this is a bit of a pipe dream, and that like the way video files actually work, frame accuracy is really not how video works. And so, like for example, when you record a video, like imagine like you have a screen recorder and you're recording a video. Mm-hmm. There are like dropped frames, and there are timestamps that are duplicated, and there are times where like a frame remains on the screen longer than it should because that's the way it was encoded. And so you start to figure this stuff out, and it's like, well, then you start to get these like accumulating errors over time, where you skip a frame here, you skip a frame there, and now where frame 300 should be is not actually frame 300, but right. It's where frame 300 would be.
So you end up at the point then to where to get a frame accurate frame 300, you've got to render the whole video up to that point. Just about.
Yeah, you have to basically seek to a point prior to that. And this goes back to how videos work, because videos don't encode, every frame in every single, like, they do like a full frame for those who don't know. And then there's like a partial, a bunch of partial frames, and then another full frame. And so if you seek to a partial frame, you get, like the macro blocks all over the screen. So you have to seek back prior to where you want to go, and then kind of walk your way forward to, trying to calculate frames best you can. And then finally you get to the frame you ask for. And then if you go backwards, like if you want to reverse video, it's even crazier, because you have to do that like in a loop. You're having to kind of like jump and seek backwards. You can't actually read a video in a backwards direction. So
yes, yeah, it's fun.
So that kind of stuff. So there's this kind of stuff is stuff I didn't even think about when I started lib OpenShot. It was just like, I'm gonna make a frame accurate, cool video editing library. It's gonna be super simple, and it's gonna be easy, and then I'm gonna build it on Mac and Windows, and it's gonna be fine.
It was not, in fact, fine.
It was not, in fact, that easy, and it's been years in the making. But it was a fun project. I learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot from it.
Have you run into problems with audio video syncing? That's another one of those that you would think would be. You would think that would be easy to keep the audio in sync with the video.
There's so many. This is like a whole separate conversation about audio video sync, but it's kind of the same stuff. It's like, audio is on its own time stamps, on its own time base, and it's like a totally different thing. It's like you have an audio file and a video file, and even though they're put in the same container, they're really two different files. And,
right.
And yeah, that's always a problem. And then you have like latency on each system. So, when you say play audio and you show a picture on the screen, it's hard just to make sure that is actually synchronized. It's actually easier to, like encode video where it's timed together than it is to edit video on a system timed together. That's a little bit harder, because again, like you get latency and whatnot.
Yeah, I've even seen times where the system clock on two different computers will be ever so slightly off, and so when you go to compare the audio files that each of them recorded, it's different enough that the end of the video or the end of the audio does not match up, and so you've then got to be like, okay, I'm gonna stretch this audio file by 0.1% to make it actually work. Oh, it's such a pain to go down that rabbit hole.
I've spent a large percentage of my time focusing on audio video sync in one form or fashion. Like it's kind of what you do when you build a video editing library. It's like audio video sync is a really big part of that, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah. Um, have you gone down the rabbit hole of trying to add AI features to OpenShot? Is that even something you're thinking about?
Well, I mean, like if we take like machine learning and computer vision, like before, so take away like modern day video gen and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
But like if you just think of like machine learning models, OpenShot's had for the last, I think 2-3 years, we've had object tracking effects where you could like track the motion of an object, for example, and then attach overlays to those coordinates, things like that.
Okay.
Like for example, you want to like mask out people's faces in the background. You can detect faces, and you can then put something over everybody's face.
It's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. So OpenShot has had some AI features and the term of like in the realm of like machine learning, but we have not tied in any kind of modern LLM or video gen or audio gen into the platform. And I don't know. It's like it's not high on my list. I'll put it that way.
Right.
And partially because there's a huge cost to doing stuff like that. Like there's no way to do some of this stuff reasonably, and some of the open source models are so slow.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine it being a good experience for people.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of mixed in my feelings on this, because I know obviously it's the hot thing right now is let's add some sort of LLM technology to everything. And I've seen some places where it gets used where it's useful, even like audio generation. You can tell an LLM, hey, I need some music that sort of sounds like this, and it can make something that sounds reasonable. I know the other side of that is, depending upon who you ask, that's either stealing music from people that actually wrote it, or it's stealing that work from people. And I am sympathetic to those viewpoints, but I think the reality is that genie is never getting put back in that bottle.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess from an open source like software perspective, people have been taking my source code for years and doing weird stuff with it. So like in a way I thought, it's like people have been stealing OpenShot for years, both commercially and, building other things and never crediting it and, violating the license and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, like all of these LLMs are trained on OpenShot's code. And now I get to like use that model for other useful stuff. That's all like they already took my code and used it. But I think, I think I am very sympathetic to like artists and musicians though, because I think it feels so personal to have that work taken and trained on and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But us open source developers have been giving content away for decades that trained all these models.
Yeah, I think it is a little different when you're giving it away on purpose, and sort of the license choice is interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
What license did you guys go with OpenShot?
So OpenShot uses a couple different licenses, but for the most part, we're like a GPL version 3 license project. But there's like elements that are MIT licensed. There's elements that are GPL licensed. Right. So there's like other licenses that touch little pieces of like libopenshot or some other stuff that is adjacent to OpenShot. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's just like standard like GPL license, which I've always liked.
Yeah. I've had sort of a change of mind, not a change of mind, but it's been pointed out to me that the more permissive licenses actually have a bit of a problem in that they are very easy to, the term that was used was rug pull. It's very easy to do a rug pull with something like an MIT. And essentially the idea here is you can do an MIT licensed project and then you can just not release the source code for the next version of it. And the MIT lets you do that. So you can just you can put out a statement that says, we're going to continue to use this under the MIT. We're not required to publish any of the sources. And it's sort of a reminder that there is a reason that the GPL is written the way that it is. And it kind of it gives me more of a ongoing appreciation for the projects that use the GPL and then intentionally use the GPL. There is a reason for that.
Yeah, OpenShot's basically, we started with the GPL license, and we're still rocking GPL version 3 for just about everything we touch.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you mentioned that there's been some commercial companies out there that you either suspect or can prove that they've come along and helped themselves to your source code and done stuff with it.
I think this is, I'm not going to name names, but this
Sure.
is like I think like FFmpeg, I believe they have like a wall of shame on their website.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
like all the products that have used FFmpeg and not, that have violated their license or something. Like I think one of the concerning things in like the open source world that concerns me sometimes when I'm laying awake at night thinking is just this idea of like venture capital funded, like actual funded companies taking open source projects, especially like server web-based products, things like that, and just taking them and renaming them and selling them at scale, where the open source project just kind of disappears and never sees a dime. um, and I see this happening on in many different places. AWS has famously been criticized for this, where they just take databases and web servers and things, and they just fork them, make changes on their own, and just kind of like rebrand them. Um, but I am concerned about that as like the future of open source a little bit, to protect these small projects that people put their time into, and then like some company just comes and takes it and puts a different logo on it and marches off with $1 million ad campaign, and the project just eats up the open source project.
Yeah, yeah. It's the reason why things like the AGPL exist. Because
Hmm.
especially you talk about hosting things on the web, you've got the web loophole, as they call it, for the GPL. Um,
Yeah.
we interviewed a project just the other day that uses the AGPL. A very interesting use of the AGPL because of the way their stuff works. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a real shame, and that's why it's always refreshing when you see a company that like tries to do things the right way. And there are a few of them out there. There's some that do this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
But
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say something that you don't always hear though is like, just because we license our code to be used in certain ways, like there's really no, like it's the burden is on me to go litigate to keep people from violating the license, and most, like the reality is like most open source projects can't go litigate, Amazon for using the license incorrectly, or I'm not trying to pick on Amazon, but there's like lots of big companies that
Right.
like you can, like lots of people violate these licenses all the time, and there's really no easy way or easy answer for how to like FFmpeg, like they just say like, well, you're on our wall of shame, um, because it's like how much you don't have the funds to go like chase down every person that violates a license.
We need an equivalent of the DMCA, but for
Yeah,
source code
that would
license.
be to protect, yeah, like to protect open source projects. That would be great.
That is not a future that I think we're ever going to live in. Sadly, I cannot imagine a way for that to actually work. It would be amazing,
Mm,
but the DMCA is such a garbage law for everything else.
I know. But
Anyway,
I still think the biggest challenge for like open source is just, funding these projects that people know and love, and making sure that they don't just disappear. I think that's a concern. We don't want all the mega corporations like running every open source project, I don't believe.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, that's for sure. So we talked about sort of the bad side of people doing weird stuff with this. What about the other side of that? What's some really interesting things that you know of that people have done with OpenShot?
I mean, some of the coolest stuff is just like educators are using OpenShot because it's so simple, Um, and so like for example in India, like there's millions of kids getting taught how to do like creative tasks using things like GIMP and OpenShot, and like these skills I think are very transferable.
Hmm.
So if you learn how to go into OpenShot and do basic video editing and set keyframes, and you learn basic photo editing, those skills are transferable to just about every commercial product as well. So I think some of the cool stuff is just watching like the education world embrace some of these open source products. Of course, they run a lot of these labs on Linux, which is why
Hmm.
they're they're kind of invested in some of these products. But so I thought it was really cool to see like OpenShot show up in textbooks, and kind of the education side of the world has been really awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things that stands out to me is the coolest things, just building something and then watching kids learn how to use it, which I think is just cool.
Yeah, that's fun. I saw that OpenShot has won some awards for sort of in the similar vein.
It's the same. Yeah, it's like, it's funny because a lot of these awards come from like big market research companies that, they pull thousands of users. They do these interviews, these web surveys. They, ask all about your creative products. And it's always funny to me when OpenShot like outpaces Adobe or Apple, which we have many times in various, not in every category, obviously, but in certain categories, OpenShot will outpace and will be, simpler to use than Adobe Premiere, which is obvious because like we've made it to be simpler. But it's always funny. I think about like OpenShot's essentially just me and a few volunteers, and I think of these like hundreds of employees sitting, these heavily funded giant tech companies competing with OpenShot, which is a little humbling to be considered amongst those kind of products as being good enough to be an award winner. But yeah, it's another honor. It's another, like, I don't build OpenShot to win awards, obviously,
right.
But I think it shows that people are responding like what we're doing is getting a response from people. They like it. So it's encouraging.
Yeah, for sure. All right. As you look forward, what's coming next? Like, do you have some future plans for OpenShot? Are there any, big upcoming features you want to hype people up for?
One thing that I'm real excited about is trying to bring new platforms to the OpenShot ecosystem, such as like mobile platforms, Android, iOS. This is an area that is, again, very complicated, trying to take our stack and add new operating systems to the target. But it is something that I would love to do. I would love to be able to like, again, a lot of people have, a lot of people's homes no longer have computers in them, right? We have like mobile devices and, iPads and Android tablets and whatnot. And so I think it would be great to be able to, at least on the larger form factors, be able to run a version of OpenShot on Android or iOS that actually works and doesn't suck. So that's one area I would love to move in. But as always, like, we're just trying to make OpenShot better, and a lot of the features we add are just things that people bring to us, and like, whether they're like a complaint or a feature suggestion, people come to the project and they say, "Hey, why does it suck at this?" And then we make it better. So
yeah, absolutely. Let me think. What was I gonna? I'm multitasking just a tiny bit here. Help!
No.
Help! That's what it was. I knew there was something. Mm-hmm. I told you before the show started that when I don't have a co-host, everything's on me, and every once in a while we have a little train wreck up here. But I'm back. What do you need help for? Like, if somebody's watching this and go, "Oh, man, I'd love to get involved in this," where is some place that somebody could jump in and help you out?
You can go to openshot.org or go to our GitHub page to get involved. There's a lot of ways to contribute, to any open source project, but often I think a lot of people feel like they're not qualified to contribute to a project. Like, well, I'm not a coder, or I'm not a professional this or professional that. But really, we just need people that are willing to give their time, and brainstorm. And I think there's just a lot of good that can come from like donating time to a project. So we're always open if people want to get involved. We have a Discord as well that you can get to from our website or our GitHub. So yeah, I would encourage anybody that wants to get involved to just give time. That's like the easiest way. And if you don't have time to give, you can obviously donate money. That's also very appreciated because these things are not free. Mm-hmm. But I think time is often like the most critical thing people can donate, just to be like, give time and talk and discuss things. Yeah,
absolutely. What's like, do you have any insight to the sort of videos that people make? Like, is there some famous YouTube video or Hollywood video even, or, what have you? You fill in the blank that
I mean, there's a lot of like, yeah, people have sent me over the years lots of awesome videos they've made. There's a lot of like documentaries that are made with OpenShot. And a lot of these are projects, they're just like passion projects of people. They're not necessarily like Hollywood funded projects or anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, people have made so much cool stuff. And that's another cool thing. Like if they join the OpenShot Discord, you can obviously share your work with, if you make something cool, you can share it with the devs that create OpenShot, which is a fun thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Has anybody done something just really weird that surprised you?
I mean, like hundreds of millions of videos have been produced with OpenShot, and I don't know, like I'm sure lots of crazy stuff has been produced, but it doesn't all make it to me. It's like one of the funniest things I had was like people were making a video as part of a school project, and I think this might have been in like Spain, but the students were asked to reach out to the creator of the program. So I ended up with like an inbox of kids that were all reaching out to me for like to be on this video they were producing for their like audio video class using OpenShot.
That's great.
And it was like I got one and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I got like another email. Then I had like 10 emails. Like just all the kids were like emailing me like, our teacher told us to reach out. But so
that reminds
yeah, I mean, it's just go ahead.
That reminds me a lot. Daniel Stenberg, the guy behind Curl, he made the brilliant decision to write his own license, and he put his email address, his personal email address, in his license.
Oh, fun!
And so yeah, he gets emails from just everybody all over the world about all kinds of random stuff because of that.
That's funny.
At some point, I think he still sort of sees the humor in it, but it's also not funny for him anymore because it's just.
Yeah,
so he'll just get it.
I thought there was a famous Microsoft thing that also has someone's email address in it, like a commit from Microsoft that's now,
probably
world famous. But the guy still gets emails from it that put his email address in it because it was like one bug that kept happening, and he wanted Microsoft engineers to email him when it happened. And it like now it's like all over the world. People have his email address.
Yeah, that's great. That stuff happens. All right. Hey, it has been a blast to chat with you about OpenShot. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you wanted to cover?
I mean, we touched a bunch of stuff. I'm good. I think if anyone's interested to like follow up and support OpenShot, just go to openshot.org, and that's kind of my pitch. Come there and you can download the project. You can get involved. You can contact me directly. My email is on the website, so you don't have to, I'm very accessible.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. That's great. That's great. All right, I've got to ask two final questions before I let you go.
Sure.
And that is, what is your favorite text editor and scripting language?
Scripting language would be Python. Text editor, I don't really have a famous, a text editor that I absolutely love. I don't play with the VI and the Emacs and all these kind of. It's never like appealed to me. I'm not like a hardcore Linux kernel kind of person. But I use most of like my software development is within the JetBrains ecosystem.
Oh, okay.
So that's like PyCharm and
Right,
CLion for C++ stuff, and they have a bunch of products. And so I spend a lot of my time inside those editors as far as like code editors and text editors, usually inside JetBrains.
Yep, absolutely. Makes sense. All right. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to get to chat with you
Sure.
and find out some more about OpenShot. I'll have to go play with it some more myself. It's not the one that I've normally used for video editing, but I'm open to experimenting with it. So we'll give it a shot and see what we think.
Sounds good. Well, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan, for being here. We appreciate it. All right. That was, of course, Jonathan Thomas from OpenShot, and it was a blast to get to talk to him. Next week is as of yet unscheduled, and so if you know of someone that we need to talk to, we've got a couple of weeks unscheduled, and then we have some in January and one in February. So we have some projects coming up as well. But we appreciate everybody being here. And want to say thanks, of course, also to Hackaday for being the home of Floss Weekly these days. If you want more of me, there is the Untitled Linux Show over at twit.tv/ULS, and we would love to see you there. Thank you to everyone that watches and listens, whether you get us live or on the download, and we will hopefully see you next week for another Floss Weekly. There we go. On the first try. All right, appreciate everybody being here. Yeah, his mic was great. It was really good. It's going to sound really good. Yeah, I felt bad about last week's. The mic there was not great, and I did some magic to try to make it better, and it still didn't turn out amazing. But this one will be really good. So all you guys that listen on audio, you'll be in for a treat this time. All right, thank you everybody. We'll see you next time.